Da-da-da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes to get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never met me before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. I'm all proud of myself. What did I tell you guys? I would figure this out 100%. And I do believe I've done it. Now, it's still going to be a little bit of an experiment because I'm going to have to keep an eye on the comments. But I guess what I should be doing is using the desktop, because then my comments would be right here and it wouldn't look like I'm looking off in a different direction. But it is in that experimentation. Just like I said yesterday, you never give up. You find a way. Somebody will pop in here and let me know if the sound is good, right? Again, it's still an experimentation. But so far, I am happy with how things are going. I hope everybody's having an amazing day. It was a quiet day for myself. I answered a few messaging and did some research on cameras and still up in the air in that, but also in taking in a few insights from some thought leadership out there, some people that I do appreciate. It does take all kinds to make the world, and I take my lessons from all kinds of people. I'm sorry, I've got my window open, just trying to get a little bit of fresh air going on. And it is something that I do appreciate about myself, that I'm not singular in concepts and in ideas. And we were talking about this because we've been working a little bit this week with that word willingness, this willingness to be able to at least listen and sit in different conversations and different perspectives, in being open to meet new people from different cultures, different parts of the world, right? People who have different ways of thinking. And for myself, I always feel out the hearts, right? I'm never going to sit with anybody that is going to be condescending or disrespectful. And of course, I'm going to probably bite my tongue a little bit in understanding that, again, it takes all kinds to make the world. And what I think might be disrespectful, it might be quite the norm for somebody else. And so I have to appreciate, that I take to heart what I really believe in, because we are moving into a world and we have been in that world. Hello, Tammy. Does it look any better? Right? We're in 1080 instead of 720 today. You guys can take a look at my ornaments a little bit better. Might not be as fuzzy. Let me know how it sounds, if the sound is okay. I will be experimenting. I will be playing around a little bit. And, I am my own teacher, right? And for a big part of the past half a dozen years, I've pretty much been my own parent. And the only reason I'm saying that is, again, because I was saying that I sit in and I take in lessons and listen in thought leadership and in the ideas and in perspectives of people that are so different than me, right? And I think it's a beautiful trait that I do have, that I am non-judgmental in that way. That's not to say that I'm not judgmental in some aspects. One of the things that really irked me when I was working was people who didn't earn their paychecks. It really bothered me. But that's because of my own experiences in my own life, right? The idea that being a highly sensitive and being empathic, that we do have that. I'm just looking over here at Tammy here, just because it is in that caregivership. And not only the caregivership, it right, lots of people they would consider it people pleasing, right? And we tend to expect that because we're like that other people will be the same way with us, right? That we have these expectations that if we work hard, if we pay attention, if we're kind and respectful, on time, showing up for all our shifts, that everybody else should be doing the same thing, right? And we know that is far from being the truth. And it was something that really did bother me. I used to call them the free paychecks, right? People who I felt didn't earn their paychecks. But if you really look at that, that is judging, right? That is judging. And it's something I'm not sure of if I've ever been able to shed that part of me in that aspect. But in this moment, I do understand that we all have different levels of capacity to be sensitive to other people's limitations, right? And not even to say that's a limitation of somebody else. It could be my own limitation of not being able to be non judgmental in that aspect. But these are all lessons that I sit in on, right? Lots of times it's in our experiences that we get to learn, and we get to have those moments and go, oh wow, that is so true, I never looked at it that way. And then it becomes our own idea, our own um uh perspective, right? Our own understanding. But it's not always a lesson that we pick up, right? Not everybody is out there taking their experiences as lessons, not taking their ideas and understandings as lessons. And it's something that I do appreciate, that I can actually allow myself to be course corrected by somebody else's experience, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's beliefs. And that is only because I am willing, right? I am willing to be course corrected. I am willing to expand a little bit, right? We don't have to go right full force 100%, because if that's the case, then what we're doing is we're rushing in to somebody else's idea because we didn't have that idea, because it wasn't an insight of ours, but because we didn't have an insight on it, or a perspective or a perception on it, even, that we just go, oh my goodness, that's the expert, that is the truth, and we take it on as our own. And it quite possibly might be a misdirection. It could be, right? Somebody else who did the exact same thing that I did and just took it as the truth. I feel out the people that I learned from. And I found that I couldn't just stay in one group in order to learn the truth, because in all honestly, nobody has all the answers. If there's one thing that I've learned in this process, it was that understanding that not everybody has the answers. But you can look towards the experts. You can look towards the people that you relate to, and people that you've not necessarily know, right? They don't know who you are, but because you've been in their content so much, or you've been in their ideas, or you've sat in their classrooms, because I do that myself too. I actually will sit in university lectures and stuff, and I will just listen to people, but I get to know them in that process, right? And maybe not in a personal way. And that is a little bit of a difficulty, because when we work in social media, we're not really we're not really getting to know them. Not everybody is genuine online. And lots of people even are genuine online, but because they know it doesn't rub people well, right? That maybe they have little quirky personalities, and, whoever's sitting there and taking in that experience, that lesson, that they are being irked by it. They're having a problem with it, right? And so it's important for us to feel out the people who we're connecting with, right? They're not connecting with us, but if they're doing it properly, they are, right? How is everything on your end, you guys? Hi, Eugene. Is everything okay with my live stream tonight? I'm using my Pixel as my webcam tonight. Is the picture and the sound okay? If you could let me know in the comments, that would be absolutely amazing. But one of the gentlemen that I was listening tonight to was somebody I have been following. I've been following his content for years, and he is an expert in narcissism and different personality disorders. And because I come from a dynamic family, because I made that wish when I first woke up to some of these ideas, that I really wanted to understand what went wrong, right? Where I stood within my own family, and how it impacted me and impacted my sisters, and to be able to put myself in my parents' shoes and take in their experiences, understanding when I knew my parents, I was fairly young, right? My father died when I was 47 years old. I didn't technically get to know him as an adult myself. So when I'm doing that back work, that shadow work, I'm going back to the past. But I always have to remember that I'm looking at those experiences as I was at that age, right? And it's something that I always have to remember. But also, I can go back, which is really interesting. I can go back to those experiences as the person that I am now, as an adult, as somebody who's had all these all these experiences that has happened to me and bothered me at times. I have had others, for ex coworkers in the last, took all the credit for all my work, and they did. Yes, I hear you in that, Tammy, 100%. But being highly sensitive and being empathic, people sense that. They're going to know that you're not going to put up a stink about it, or at the very least that you're going to hold it in for as long as you can before you actually break. And it happens, right? But they expect you to break. They expect at some point you're going to snap and you're going to say, oh my goodness, what are you doing? Like I said about the free paycheck and stuff, that bothered me. But it was one of the reasons why I had to leave my last job. And I would think that in any job that I quit or I left, right? That it was for that exact same reason. I don't know seriously why that happens to empaths, except to say that we are sensitive that way. And because they can sense that sweetness, that kindness, that meekness, right? Because we avoid conflicts, don't we? We don't like to stir the pot, but we have to learn to stir the the pot. Sorry about that. That Alice, I tell you, I can tell her 100 times and she'll still phone me and message me and interrupt my live shows. I think she thinks it's funny. I think she entertains herself by doing it, in all honesty. Okay, but getting back to that, it is in our self parenting, and it's actually a topic that wanted to talk about. So if we're in it and anyway, if we're in that topic anyway, it would maybe help you if you're still in the workforce. But I believe, Tammy, that you said you were retired now, that it is in our self parenting, it is in picking up that baton, even, and mothering ourselves, right? Being that parent for ourselves and searching out those answers. Like I said earlier, when I first woke up to some of these ideas, I wanted to know what went wrong, right? What were the problems within my family? I think in the beginning of me waking up to some of these ideas, I wanted to know what was wrong with me, right? Only to come to learn that, just like these people taking credit for your work or taking credit for my work, it was because I allowed it to happen. I was a walking billboard saying, I'm an empath, right? I'm a highly sensitive, right? I'm meek. I'm right. Whatever it is that makes it so somebody can feel dominant over you. And usually those people that are making you feel inferior are people who feel inferior themselves, right? That have those feelings themselves of inferiority, so they will go and take credit for work that somebody who they think is lesser than them, right? Or won't speak up or won't make a fuss about it, right? That they'll just take it, right? Like it's just like thievery in that, to be honest. But as you move forward and you start parenting yourself and you start treating yourself like you matter, and when that happens, that really does mean that you have to stick up for yourself, that you have to stand your ground, that you don't turn the other cheek to these things, that you have those discussions with people, because there's always somebody higher than that person. That person can think they're the highest of the highest, but there's always somebody that person is going to be held accountable for. And then when you find that, possibly that person who is higher up than that person will take that person's side, which would make you feel even worse about that, right? Because then you truly feel like you have nobody on your side. And then it compounds these ideas that you're not good enough, or people take advantage of me, or why can't that person earn their paycheck, but I have to earn my paycheck, or Why do I have to do my job, but on top of that, do somebody else's job and they take the credit? Well, in my last job, that was exactly what happened to me. To be honest, Tammy, in that situation that you were in, and you know what I did? I gave my 2 weeks notice, right? I talked to the higher ups. The higher ups talked to that person. That person, right? That person, we talk about narcissism quite a bit, right? I knew that they would try, but they would only be able to try as far as their last nerve would allow them to. And it doesn't take much. And when you go above somebody and you actually decide you're not going to turn the other cheek, that you're going to speak to HR about it, or you're going to stop talk to the owner or the head manager or something, right? About that situation. Well, then comes the jealousy and resentment, which is probably already there, because if they're taking credit for the work that you're doing, you were doing a good job, right? You were doing a good job. So it's interesting that you say that, Tammy, but it comes from being your own parent. And it's about, right, building some backbone. It's about knowing your value. And I'm sure, Tech, that you are exactly like me that way, that you know your value, you know your worth, you know what you're good at, you know your strengths, you know your weaknesses. But because of your kind heart and your non-confrontational way of living, that, right, sometimes we let it slide. And for myself, I have a problem with letting these things slide, right? Like I said, I have a problem with the free paycheck, and I don't care if it's the janitor, I don't care if it's a supervisor or a manager or the owner of the company. Somebody always has an higher up. And if that higher up doesn't look into it and see it, then what I did, your absence has to say it all, right? And it's unfortunate that there'll be problems in that, because if you're anything like I was, Tammy, you were probably holding everything together, right? But not taking care of yourself in that process. And that lesson that I got, that one about taking care of myself and self parenting, that came from a gentleman named Sam Vatkin. Now, if you're interested, I know you love YouTube, Tammy, so you might be interested. Maybe write that name down, Sam Vatkin. He's a professor of psychology. He's not a psychologist, but he teaches the psychologists, right? And he is an expert on narcissism. He's an expert in all different kinds of personality disorders. And he's actually the one who taught me about self-parenting, about, being able to be my own parent, to understand that, if nobody else cares about me, if nobody else is willing to point out what I get right, and only in their judgmental attitude is just pointing out everything that's wrong, and then also asking me to hold on to what they get wrong, which was a big problem for me, right? Because misery does love company, and if somebody's feeling bad about themselves, they are going to bring you right down to their level, and they're going to make you feel the same way, probably even worse than how they feel. And that's how they make themselves feel better about themselves. If they can't steal your work, they're going to steal your frame of mind. And it was, well, it was a lesson. I'm grateful that I learned that lesson fairly early, because it served me so well in what I'm doing. Because I don't think, I've been at this a long time now, but I don't think I would have gotten as far as I am now if I hadn't gotten that prerequisite before all the bigger lessons. Because some of these lessons are really hard. Some of these lessons you don't want to believe. And actually, I took some notes here. What was the subject? I think it might be um no, it's not pertinent. It's not pertinent. This was a different I like to take notes, right? I go through these scribblers. These are pretty thick scribblers. I've had this scribbler over a month now. I think I'm about halfway through it. But I used to scribble like a mad woman. Now, forgive me also, you guys, because I'm getting used to my new camera here. So I'm going to rearrange it a little bit tomorrow, so I'm actually not staring over here at the comments, right? That I'm actually continuing to stare at my camera, at you, right? Rather than at the comments. But today, in that adapt and conquer, in that experimentation and just being happy, you guys, I did it. It was issues for me yesterday, but today I'm back on it. And that's a prime example in never giving up. And then talking about taking lessons from different people, right? Sam Vatkin is an expert in narcissism, but that never giving up, I learned that from an entrepreneur, one of the very top entrepreneurs on YouTube. He's actually a YouTube creator, and he teaches mindset. But well, I'm not going to say that. He teaches and helps people to be good entrepreneurs, to be their own boss. But he mixes that content with his passion for mindset, right? And I law of attraction. If you guys don't know what mindset is all about, law of attraction. I am non-denomination. I think that's why I'm able to hang out with all kinds, like different ages, different perspectives, different religious ideas, different levels in education, right? From somebody who might be almost homeless to somebody who wears a suit and makes millions of dollars, right? That I find that I can be relatable because I've been hanging out with these people off and on, right? That I've been grateful that these people have popped into my life, whether they were clients or customers or just in working in hospitality for oh my goodness, I was in hospitality for a few decades. I was, right, whether I did restaurant work or in working in bars and nightclubs, which was my absolute favorite, that I got to learn about being able to connect with different people, right? And I believe that it served me well. And especially, being a YouTube creator and being able to come in here 6 days a week and be able to sit here and have conversation, not knowing everybody in the comments or who my content is connecting with, but understanding my content is relevant for anybody who is having these issues in being able to be their own person, right? To be able to understand that they matter, that, that these issues that we pick up when we are kids and then they get compounded throughout our life, even into our work environments and into our marriages. And then we pass that. We were talking about this yesterday about passing this stuff down to our kids, our insecurities, right? And we want our kids to grow up healthy and strong and well balanced in their understanding. But we've got to understand first that we can only control our own actions, our own thoughts, and our own emotions, and understand what's ours, right? What's ours, and what belongs to somebody else, and not just keep that inside. And not, that doesn't mean to be confrontational, right? Not to say that was my work, what the hell do you think you're doing, and blah, 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 like, and freak out, because they'll use that as ammo on you too, saying, oh my goodness, look at Cindy, she can't control her temper. And meanwhile, right, I was just triggered because somebody is doing this at me, poking at me. And because I am such a genuine person, because I am open, but I do that purposely because it's not what I don't like that word enemy. It's used a lot, right? And it's not true. It's just somebody we don't understand, right? And but because I am open, and because I tell a lot of stories, and those stories have to come from my own experiences in order for them to connect with somebody else, because it's in that mirroring that somebody sees themselves and they go, oh my goodness, okay, well, maybe I'll try this self-parenting and see if that will help make me to be a little bit more self-reliant, to not depend on other people to take care of my needs, which I did, and it made me weak, in all honesty, because I didn't know how to fill my own gaps. I always looked towards other people because other people needed to get their needs filled. So they would fill my needs without showing me or teaching me how to fill my own needs. And again, that turns us into weak and meek people. But it doesn't mean that in that self-parenting that we have to be learning to be tough, that we, right? When I say don't turn the other cheek, I don't mean to be confrontational. I mean, don't let that person leave, right? That scene, that experience, without them at least understanding how they impacted you, right? Or what they got wrong, because it's our responsibility then. Because if we turn the other cheek and after they just blew up on us, or they took credit for our work, like Tammy was saying, or they want to bring us down to their level and make us feel bad, well, if we allow them to do that and just walk away, well, what are we doing? We're giving them permission to go off and do that to somebody else. But it doesn't make it, because they did that to you, that they're an enemy. They're somebody who is probably more insecure than you are. And because of those tendencies to puff themselves up, right? To make them feel like they are above you and you are underneath their thumb, that they are going to direct you in a way because they know that you're kind hearted, that you're non confrontational, that you're just going to take it. And I refuse to do that, unfortunately, right? And it's not like I don't get triggered. I can handle those triggers a lot better now. Like I said, in my last job, oh my goodness, I gave my 2 weeks notice, and they were the best 2 weeks in any job I had ever left in my entire life. And I've had a lot of jobs in my lifetime because being highly sensitive and empathic, right? You change jobs like you change your underwear because, right, there's these people are in there and they are looking for somebody else to hold their pain, right? Because that's what it is. Those insecurities are pain. And if they don't feel good about themselves and you are optimistic and open and friendly and easy to connect with, and they don't feel that they have those qualities, they will bring you down. They really will bring you down. And I was so proud of myself in how I left my last job, and it was absolutely beautiful. All the goodbyes, all the love that I got from the people that I worked with, and the customers that I took care of. When I left there, oh my goodness, I must have had like 6 gift cards. People were coming in and bringing me coffees every day. They were giving me hugs, and oh my goodness, I'm going to miss you. It was oh my goodness, it was an experience. It was truly, just thinking about it, it was so beautiful, right? It doesn't break my heart, but in a way it does, because there were aspects of that job that I truly loved. But because of the same situation as you, Tammy, right? That it wasn't the fact that somebody was taking credit for my work, because everybody knew the job that I was doing, but sometimes they can make you look like, right, they can give credit for your work and give that credit to somebody else. And in the 5 years that I was in my last job, I never missed one day, not one day of work, right? um in the end was the pride. But in all actuality, I've never missed a day of work in any job that I have ever had, not without giving notice. Of course, I've taken holidays, and there are doctor's appointments and stuff that I had to book off, but I never, ever missed a day of work. I was the most dependable person, always showing up. And that was my claim to fame, right? My only claim to fame. But I didn't use that as a claim to fame. I used it because I didn't want to get in trouble. I didn't want the backlash of a manager saying, "Oh my goodness, you can't have the day off tomorrow," or "Why didn't you show up? Why did you call in sick?" And because I was a very terrible liar, right? You can see right through me. And that's part of why I'm so genuine this way, why I let a lot of my weaknesses and faults come to the surface so others can see that, right, that I'm not perfect. I'm not the be all to end all, that I'm just bumbling along just like everybody else. And yes, my weaknesses might be a little bit different than everybody else, but it takes all kinds to make the world. We all have handicaps, emotionally, mentally, physically, we all do. But we don't usually accept that. We're not always willing to let that be known. But for myself, it worked out well for me to let that be known, because I would much rather know who my foe was. Not my enemy, but my foe, right? And you know, if they used that against me, I knew we had a problem, right? And yeah, so when it was used against me, I didn't have a choice. I went to the higher up. That didn't work. Well, it worked for about 48 hours, and then it just went back to the way it was. And I said, well, my absence is just going to have to be the proof. It's going to have to be the evidence, right? And sure enough, that's the way it worked out. And it wasn't in maliciousness, right? That I specifically went to hurt the company or to hurt the customers or to even have the store physically fall apart or anything. But I couldn't, right? I was in the middle of my lessons, and who would I be if I wasn't the example in my lessons, that I didn't practice what I preached? And I put those lessons of self parenting, even though it was painful, at the same time very beautiful, and I did it. And I was terrified. And I thought that, oh my goodness, Cindy, you really did it this time. You're going to end up homeless and you just destroyed your life completely. You're going to lose your YouTube channel and everything. You know what, you guys? That was 10 months ago. And life is pretty good, right? I applied myself in those goals and those dreams that I have for myself and those things that I want to achieve in my life. And even though in the moment it might not seem I'm even a fraction close enough to what I'm reaching out to, but I understand like things can change in an instant, in one choice, in one movement, right? Because we understand that it is in our choices, it is in the actions that we take, it is in the opportunities that come across our path, and it is in our own discernment and our own determination to better ourselves, right? Because it's like taking a bachelor's degree and then just keep going higher and higher and higher until, right, you're the professor of psychology that is actually teaching the psychologists. That's who I want to learn off. I want to learn off people who are the experts in their field. I understand that even the experts don't get it right, but none of us get it right, and it's in our bumbling along that eventually, right, we'll hit on to something, right? Or something will come across our path. And because we have the know-how, because we have the determination, because we have the confidence that we'll be able to snag that. Yeah, that was a really good insight, Tammy, that you shared there. But that is something that's very common with highly sensitives and empaths, right? That we don't stick up for ourselves when other people take credit for our work, right? But I'm not a true believer in turning the other cheek, even though that was the way that I was brought up. I was brought up that way, to turn the other cheek. And if you guys don't know, turn the other cheek is actually a speech that Jesus did on the Sermon of the Mount, and it got twisted all around by the church because wives would go talk to their pastors and their priests and say, hey, my husband is beating me, my husband is abusing me and abusing the kids, and they didn't know how to deal with that. So they would say, turn the other cheek. And it became part of the curriculum, right? Of how we teach our kids, and they grow up and get married and they take it to heart, and then they teach their kids. Epigenetically, this is what we do, and this is what I'm trying to course correct. But because I'm not going back to university, I'm not going for any degrees, you guys, but I am a muncher. I love delving into emotions, and I love different perspectives, and I love learning off of the experts. And I expect that I will be able to hold my own, even up against someone like Sam Vatkin, who is actually himself, even though he's a professor of psychology, he is uh, um, a narcissist himself, an actual, he's been diagnosed as a narcissist himself. And I sit in on his content and I can't believe I've seen little snippets of his personality come to the surface in different interviews and in how strict and how well set up his boundaries are. But each one of us are allowed to have boundaries, right? We are allowed to have our likes and dislikes. And when I say don't turn the other cheek, he's doing that exact same thing. But he's creating the best life for himself as he possibly can because, right, narcissism is very uncomfortable. Narcissism, right, for that, right, even for myself coming from the dynamic family that I grew up in, the reason his content was suggested to me, I thought, was for me to be aware of the narcissists in my own family, right? And there are narcissists in my family. But because even though my father was an empath, right? I suspect he was very empathic. He practiced mindset. I wasn't woke to any of the ideas, so I wasn't able to sit down and have any of these kind of conversations with my father. I wish that I had had that opportunity. I was 23 when he passed away. I didn't wake up to any of these ideas until I was in my 50s, and I'm treading water. I'm making up for lost time. And I'm so grateful that I am such a muncher on these topics, meaning I really love them. I'm a little bit compulsive in them, and they become an addiction for me, right? But they are a healthy addiction for me. And not only a healthy addiction for me, I feel they truly did save my life, and they have expanded the understandings of those other parts of me that have been maybe just bumbling on along uh, in a little bit harsher environment than what I am in right now, or what my nieces and nephews and great nieces and our bloodline going on moving forward, that we have a better understanding, and each one of us will have those choices to understand it a little bit better, right? I understand that I only have control over my own actions, my own thoughts, and my own emotions. But it is in my optimistic idea that I can be the example for others, that it can be done, that we can overcome our limitations, that we can find healthy addictions, that we can learn not to turn the other cheek, that we can be the example of how to move forward with good boundaries and baseline values, that everybody can be schooled in by myself, just like Sam Vatkin has his set of boundaries and his set of values, right? And if you want to interact with him, you better be able to understand them, right? Or he'll let you know in a moment, or he'll just shut it down. That live, oh, you're not listening? Okay, that live show's over, and he'll just, in the middle of an interview, and he'll just hit that bye bye button right off the hop. And that's his prerogative. But I think he's an absolute sweetheart. I really do, because he's taking care of himself. He doesn't mean ill intent out there. He's just trying to have the best existence for himself as he possibly can. And I think each one of us has that right to do that. Yeah, interesting that you brought that up, Tammy, right? Self-parenting, it's very, very important. There's lots of people out there that would be really good in those topics. Uh, but I would just say Google. that question that you have as to why, Google that question, and you can hit all, and all the topics will show up. You can limit it to the past year so that you can get current information. But I learned from people who've been passed away for like 100 years, even going back even further, because right when it comes to law of attraction and mindset, even though I think it's not been around for very long, maybe a couple 100 years, maybe, that it was something that people just studied and learned, but it's been around in different ways. Like, I think it's a runoff of the Stoics, if you know what the Stoics are, and is taking bits of ideas from all over the place to set up a new schooling that works really, really well. I think the reason that I picked it myself, because we are so close in this digital age, this age of AI learning, that I can connect with people on the other side of the world, but they have different ways of living, different ways of thinking, different values, and then to be able to have base values that um, mindset, law of attraction put together, that it works very well in this day and age. It works it works very well. And I've been using it now, well, ever since I woke up to some of these ideas, and I've made some friends, right? All over the world. I've made connections. And because when we don't know somebody, there's always that alpha, there's always that placement of who's above who, and everybody's going to try, right? Everybody's going to try. For myself, I'm not particular. If you're kind, right? You're generous in your time, and in your understanding, and willing to listen, or willing to give your own opinions, in being able to respect my boundaries, knowing that I will respect yours. But in that idea of being genuine, we have that understanding that we can set our boundaries, and you have to set your boundaries, and your boundaries have to be known. So you have to vocalize them, or write a letter, or make a video, or a Facebook post, or a YouTube, right? But you won't know who your foes are, right? Unless you do, because your foes won't care about your boundaries. They don't care that you have boundaries, right? They'll just cross them. And then you'll know, right? You'll know. And the people who do respect your boundaries, even if they're different, even if they have different values, if they have those baseline values that you can manage, and you have your boundaries set up, which is usually based on your baseline values, then you'll be able to meet people, all different kinds of people, and it's glorious. It really is, in understanding that it takes all kinds to make the world, and it's more true today than it ever has been, right? And it starts with tolerance, and then it moves to acceptance, and then after acceptance it moves to wonder, right? And then it moves to looking forward to really getting to know people. And I love it. I really do love it. And I got those prerequisites in the jobs that I had in hospitality, so it was easy for me to move into that. But it's because I'm online that it serves me so well. But if I just wanted to better myself, right? So I could be a better wife, or a better mother, not to be able to pass my problems down down the line, be a better neighbor, right? To be able to FaceTime with somebody on the other side of the world or sit in on a new perspective and go, oh my goodness, right? Right? That's so true. I'm going to take that on as my own. Or say, oh my goodness, right? I was a Jehovah Witness my entire life. But you know what? I think maybe I'd like to be an evangelist or move into gospel or worship Buddha or hear Krishna or, right? To better understand and make choices for ourselves and just not move along with our parents' choices, right? That we get to experience the world with truly open eyes. Okay, you guys, let's grab a card. That was a conversation tonight. They seem to be happening more and more often, but Tammy started that one, so we're just gonna blame Tammy on that one. Come into the comments here for just a moment before we move on. Hello, Earl. I'm so happy that you popped in tonight. Um, aw. But it's okay to cry, you guys. You never, if you feel like crying. I haven't cried for a long time. Well, I'm not going to say that. My cat recently passed away recently. It's been Christmas. I've just been taking a little bit hard because I really love that cat. That cat came into my life when I was just in the midst of falling apart, and she kept me together, right? She took care of me, I took care of her, and it was in that teamwork that we got through. And I really loved that cat. So don't make me cry. Don't make me cry now. But to say it's important, if you feel like crying, just cry, right? Get it out of your system. That's how we start to resolve a lot of those issues that we have. That's how we get through grief and heartbreak. It's crying and talking and time, right? So those three ingredients. So never deny those three ingredients. If you need to, right? You do it, and don't feel bad about it because it's only going to show you well. It's only going to show that you have a heart, right? And that's a beautiful thing, Earl. That really is a beautiful thing, right? I'm giving you a hug. I'm a hugger, right? I am a hugger, but I'm on YouTube, so it's a virtual hug there, Earl. But I get you. I really do, right? But don't hesitate. If you feel you need it, and you'll feel better for that, right? You'll be able to have a good sleepy because you know how exhausted bawling your eyes out makes you feel exhausted when it's all over. And it always makes it so you can have a good sleepy. Okay, you guys, let's grab a card. Maybe it'll be pertinent tonight. We'll just go into it for a couple of minutes and then off we go. Oh my goodness. What were we talking about a little bit tonight? Okay. Oh, here's the camera now. Okay, the word we got tonight. Let's do the thumbnail first. Okay. Integrity. Integrity is the example that others will follow, right? And we were talking about that a little bit today, um, in being that example for others, in not turning the other cheek. That doesn't mean that we don't have integrity. It doesn't mean that we're blowing off on people, that we are not flexible and understanding, right? But it is in being that example for others that we build that integrity that others will follow, but that integrity that we need for ourselves because it's been beaten down because we've been holding everybody else's non integrity, right? We have had our work swiped out from underneath us, right? And they are expecting us to blow up because we can only take it for so long. But in that integrity, that example of how it's done, like what I said about when I quit my last job, it was the best 2 weeks I ever had. And I felt so good when I left. It was still sad, but I felt really good in how I handled that whole situation. And in the end, everything worked out okay. I didn't end up homeless. I was able to apply myself even harder in what I'm doing. And also, it gave my system some time to come down because even though I was holding up the fort, even though I wasn't making a scene, right? I was still getting wired by that, right? If I wasn't getting wired, I wouldn't have quit that job, right? And it is in that example that we represent in a way that makes it possible for other people to say, "Oh my goodness, if she did it, I can too." Okay, you guys, that's my good cheer. You guys have a great night. Thank you so much for popping into my live. Thank you, Tammy, for watching over everything for me because I wasn't looking at the comments myself too much. We'll have to set up a little bit different tomorrow. So when I do look at the comments, I'm still feeling like I'm looking at you guys. Let me know. I'll be coming into my live and going over the lesson for myself because I know there's a lesson there for me too. But I also want to check out to make sure that everything turned out okay. You guys have a great night, and we'll see you tomorrow.